Dillian Whyte is still saying that he is a way more dangerous fight for Anthony Joshua than Jarrell Miller is. And in his opinion, he says the reason that Joshua has decided to fight Miller rather than rematch him is because Miller is cheaper, he's got no real profile, and he's not as dangerous. Well, in terms of who's more dangerous for AJ, Dillian Whyte or Jarrell Miller, that remains to be seen. We need to see AJ rematch Dillian Whyte right now, because we can't go off AJ's performance against Dillian Whyte many years ago, because AJ has improved a massive amount since then. Just think of all the people he's beat: Klitschko, Povetkin, Takam, Brazil, Parker, etc. All the experience AJ's gained from all that, as well as, you know, the sparring, the training camps, improving his technique, so on and so forth. He's a totally different fighter now to the guy he was when he fought Dillian several years ago. And of course, Dillian has improved too, but we won't know who's improved more until we see them in the ring again. We would have to see AJ fight Jarrell Miller and Dillian Whyte in the next 12 to 18 months. And then we'd be able to know who's the more dangerous. So it's conjecture at the moment. But I guess Dillian Whyte is talking about Joshua's perception. Perhaps he thinks that Joshua thinks that Jarrell Miller is an easier fight than Dillian Whyte is. But I do have to contend something that Dillian Whyte said here when he said that Jarrell Miller is cheaper than he is. That's not actually true. According to reports, Jarrell Miller is actually getting $6.5 million for the Anthony Joshua fight, which is more than was offered to Dillian Whyte. So no, Jarrell Miller is not actually a cheaper opponent. He's a more expensive opponent. Now, DAZN, being Anthony Joshua's broadcast partner in the United States, they were the ones who stumped up the money, the $6.5 million. Sky Sports in the UK are not stumping up as much money for opponents as DAZN are when it comes to Anthony Joshua opponents. DAZN are willing to pay more. That's why Miller got more money than Dillian Whyte. But nevertheless, he's not cheaper. You know, Dillian was being offered what he was being offered. I think it was like $5 million in the end, $4 million or £5 million, which is around the same or a little bit less than Jarrell Miller was, or Jarrell Miller is reportedly getting. So yeah, Jarrell Miller definitely not cheaper. And does Anthony Joshua think that Miller is an easier fight than Dillian Whyte? I don't know. I'm not in Anthony Joshua's head. Joshua is a guy who doesn't do many interviews. He doesn't give very much away. So it's impossible to know whether he sees Miller as an easier fight than Dillian Whyte or not. At the end of the day, he's knocked out Dillian Whyte and he hasn't knocked out Jarrell Miller. So you get a certain confidence from knocking a guy out because you know you can do it again. You know if the same punches connect on his chin, you're going to put him away just like you did last time. That's what you have in your head, at least. Whether it turns out like that in the ring is a different thing. But the point being, he knows, or at least he thinks he knows, that he can knock Dillian Whyte out. And he thinks he knows how to beat Dillian Whyte. Whereas with Jarrell Miller, it's uncharted territory for AJ. He's got a bigger guy in front of him than Dillian Whyte. He's got a guy who is even more aggressive in terms of his personality and even more aggressive in terms of his fighting style as well. The guy is over 300 pounds. He applies a lot of pressure. And that's one thing as well that I kind of alluded to in a couple of previous videos is whether or not Jarrell Miller is actually going to come out and fight the way we think he's going to fight, because he does have boxing skills. I'm just unsure about whether he can utilize those boxing skills at his current weight, because his last few fights, he's been between 280 and 320 or something like that. Very, very heavy. Some of you may have seen the sparring footage early on in Jarrell Miller's professional boxing career against Vladimir Klitschko. And in some of that Klitschko footage, Miller was moving very well. He was sticking and moving. His feet looked quick. He looked nimble. But that was about 60, 70 pounds ago, as well as several years ago. So it remains to be seen if Miller can do that for the AJ fight. I'm hearing lots of different reports about Miller that he's trying to lose loads of weight for this fight against AJ. Other people saying, no, he's going to come in about the same or slightly lighter than he's been. We just have to wait and see on the night. But I personally think that Jarrell Miller has the potential to give Anthony Joshua a lot of problems, as I keep saying, if he can handle AJ's power. If he can handle that power, I think AJ is in for a very, very rough night. All right. I don't think that AJ is very physically strong. We know this. He outstrengthed Klitschko, and Klitschko is immensely strong himself. AJ outstrengthed Dominic Breazeale. Dominic Breazeale is very strong. So AJ is a very, very strong fighter. But will he be stronger than Jarrell Miller? Will he be able to keep Jarrell Miller off of him? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think Anthony Joshua will certainly be the physically strongest fighter Jarrell Miller's ever been in with, at least in a professional ring. I don't know what he's done in sparring. I'm not fully up to speed on his kickboxing career. I've seen some of his kickboxing fights, of course, but not all of them. But certainly as far as professional opponents go in boxing, Anthony Joshua will surely be the strongest, by far the strongest opponent Miller's been in there with. And I'm talking about physical strength, not necessarily just punching power, but the physical strength of the man. And I also believe the reverse is true. I don't think Anthony Joshua would have been in with anybody as physically strong as Jarrell Miller as a professional before. Klitschko, very strong. Breazeale's strong. These are strong guys. Takam's strong, of course. But I don't think any of them could match the physical strength of Miller right now. Miller a few years ago wasn't as strong as he is right now. Right now, he's bench pressing a hell of a lot of weight and he weighs a hell of a lot. And you can see the effect he has on his opponents when he's in the ring. He's able to push them back with ease, and ragdoll guys who are like 250, 260, between 6'4" and 6'6". He's ragdolling these guys. I think Marius Wack is even taller than that, right? Marius Wack is like, what, 6'7", 6'8"? He bullied that guy. So it's going to be interesting to see. But as far as, Dillian Whyte's comments that AJ is picking a cheaper, safer option, well, again, certainly not cheaper. And as far as safer, remains to be seen. Dillian Whyte wanted more than the £4 or £5 million he was being offered. And he also wanted to be the A side in the rematch. Being the A side in the rematch, is it a reasonable request? It is. It definitely is a reasonable request, or at least 50-50 in the rematch. Was he going to be 60-40 in the rematch? Or was it? I think he was going to be 50-50 in the rematch, wasn't he? Or was he going to be 60-40? Maybe I'm wrong. You guys tell me. So that is an area of contention. But at the end of the day, if he really believes he can beat Anthony Joshua, you're going to have to fight him twice anyway. Unless you are the mandatory, you're going to have to fight him twice. Because if you beat him, it's going to be a rematch straight. Especially with Dillian, because AJ's beaten Dillian before. It's not like he went in there with somebody he's never fought before and gets blasted out and then he's unsure of himself. No, if AJ was to lose to Dillian, in the back of AJ's head, he's like, well, I've beaten him before. I just need to make this and that adjustment and I'll beat him again. So if he fought AJ, it's going to be a rematch anyway. So he would have to fight him twice. And if you get through those fights, if you really believe you could beat him, after that, you're the man. You got all the belts. You call the shots. You're the A side against anybody from there on in. As long as you keep hold of those belts. So, yeah, Dillian is, as people were saying, gambled on himself, bet on himself. He wants to put himself in a stronger position and then come back to the table with AJ or Deontay Wilder or whoever's a champion in the future and make more money, be offered more money, be offered a better deal next time he steps to the table trying to get a world title fight. I think that if he does manage to get in a mandatory position, he's going to have to take the Anthony Joshua fight next time. He'll have to. If he becomes mandatory and the mandatory gets called, he's going to have to make it. And that's going to be interesting as well because, remember, he turned down $4 or $5 million against AJ in a rematch. if he becomes mandatory for AJ with the WBO or the IBF or whatever, he's only going to get like 25%. Is 25% going to be enough for him? You know, let's say, you know, the pot is, I don't know, 25 million pounds, 30 million pound pot. You do the math from that. Is that going to be enough for Dillian Whyte? Maybe it will, given the fact that there's no rematch. If you're mandatory, unless you do some kind of silly deal like Tyson Fury did with Klitschko, if you're mandatory, there's no rematch clause. So you beat the champion, you get to sail off into the sunset and do what you want. If the champion wants a rematch, he has to come to you on your terms. If you want to give him 10%, you can do it. You want to give him 5%, you could do it if you want. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about everything I've talked about in this video. Is Dillian Whyte more dangerous for Anthony Joshua than Jarrell Miller? Stylistically. Let me know what you think. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.